let me just make a few comments about the doctor's recommendations and restrictions, and some major considerations here. And it says here, list recommended days off, list recommended restrictions, include the amount or the frequency, list recommended home care such as ice packs. Let me talk about days off first. Make sure that when you get a patient that comes in, a personal injury patient, make sure you ask to take off, if they can take off for the next 3 or 4 days to help control inflammation. And you want those in your records that you asked or suggested that they take off at least for the next 3 to 4 days to help. And the reason for that is to help decrease pain and inflammation. Now, one of the major reasons you want to do that also, and make sure it's in your notes, even if they cannot. So ask the patient, is there any way we could take off like the next 4 days just to get on top of this thing and help decrease the pain and inflammation as fast as possible without you irritating it anyway? Is that possible? That's what it sounds like. Now, the reason you want to do that is you do not want to be in a deposition and then you're saying, the person has this permanent injury and you're explaining all the problems, right? And then the attorney goes, well, doctor, you didn't even recommend time off, or he didn't even take any time off. And so it's kind of it's not good. I mean, it's not good when you didn't recommend any time off and they didn't take any time off, and then it comes out in the deposition or in court that you didn't even recommend it and they didn't take it off, but yet you're saying, what a big injury this is. So, that it doesn't look good. Hopefully you can understand what I just said. So it doesn't mean that they have to take off. That is not what it means. What it means is you just have to document it that you recommended it. And what's the reason you want to recommend it? Is to immediately get control and decrease the pain and inflammation as fast as possible. Even if this injury happened 3 months ago. If the person has pain, they're having inflammation. They're either having nerve damage or inflammation. That's what's causing the pain. So ask to take the patient off. Now, I don't necessarily, and I never ask for long periods at a time. Like in the beginning, I'll just ask for 4 days. And after 4 days, depending on what they can or can't do relative to their work, because the work is going to be typically the biggest problem, then I'll, if the problem is still sensitive enough and their work environment is strenuous enough, if I'm looking at those two combinations, then I'll ask them week to week. I'll say, well, can we take off, 1 week at a time here until we can get you back to where you can work without re-injuring yourself? And then only go week to week. Don't give, time slots off or recommendations off or notes for more than a week. Just go week to week. And so the first thing you want to do is ask for total time off. If they can't do that, just for 4 days. If they can't do that, then ask if you can do restrictions. Is there any way we could do restrictions with work? And sometimes they can't. They can't do it because they got to go to work, or they'll risk losing their job, or they need the money. And you need to say that in your notes. You need to say that you recommended it, but they couldn't do it because of whatever the reason is. And the typical common reason is they can't do it because of work, or they're afraid they'll lose their job, or there's no part-time work available where they work. They either have to go to work and work full, or they got to take off. Those are the common scenarios. So make sure when you get a personal injury patient, make sure you at least request 4 days off to help decrease the pain and inflammation. Okay, that is the true reason, but also for appearances. When the insurance attorney reads the narrative or your medical reports, or it comes out in a deposition, you don't want to be sitting there going, oh no, I didn't recommend any time off, but now you're trying to say how bad the injury is and it's a permanent injury and blah, 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 but you didn't recommend any time off. That just doesn't fly in front of an 8th grade educated jury. That's a negative, and hopefully you can see that. So relative to the time off, that's how you want to handle time off. And then if they can't, that's fine, but make sure in your notes you put you recommended it, but they couldn't for whatever reason. They're afraid they needed to make the money, the work wouldn't allow it, they were afraid they were going to get fired. Those are the common ones. And by the way, everything we're talking about right here, once you learn it, it's the same thing over and over and over. I mean, once you learn this, it's the same thing. It's unbelievably repetitive. We see the same thing over and over 90% of the time as chiropractors. So that's a little bit about work off. So I'm going to go for work off first. If I can't get off, I'm going to go for restrictions second. And if they can't do that, they just can't do it, and I'm making a notation of it. Now, in addition to that, always recommend restrictions, some type of physical restrictions. So you want to recommend time off and for a short period of time, like for the pain, to help get on top of this pain and inflammation. And then you want to recommend restrictions in their activities, no physical, and basically I put, no physical exerting activities, for the next 4 days. So limit the restrictions, because that also shows, not only does it help with pain and inflammation, but it shows that that this person has a legitimate problem. And this is also true if the person had this injury 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, 1 week ago. It doesn't matter, because if they're in their office, they have pain and inflammation. It may be overlapping. There could be repair phase going on with the inflammation phase. There can be inflammation phase with repair phase with the remodel phase. And I talk about that extensively in the 4 dimensions of an injury. And most of the time, that is what is going on. You never have an injury that's just black and white. It just goes, it's in inflammation, then stops and goes into repair, and there's no overlap, and then it stops, and then it goes into remodel phase, and then it stops. That never happens because of a thing called life. We're dynamic. So, recommending restrictions. You definitely want to do it. So that's time off, restrictions, and then home care. Make sure you recommend basic home care. And I talk about ice packs, in the beginning. So we don't want them doing stretching and exercises and anything like that. We're in the inflammation phase, and that's where we're starting. So make sure you recommend days off. If not, limitations at work. If not, make sure it's documented. Make sure you have limit their restrictions, their physical activities. Make sure that's noted. And then definitely recommend analgesics at home, which is that's the ice pack, and the basic instructions on how to use it. Those are the 3 things that you definitely need to do